For 2 years, I paid my sister's mortgage while she lectured me about financial responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on me, but what choice did I have? Family is family, right? Wrong. My name is Oralee, and I'm 29 years old. To most people who know me casually, I'm just another young professional trying to make it in the world. I drive a 3-year-old Honda Civic, live in a modest rental apartment in Burbank, and run what my family dismissively calls a small consulting company. What they don't know, what I've carefully kept from them for years, is that I'm actually a multimillionaire who owns 17 rental properties across Southern California. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to where this all began to unravel. It was a Sunday evening in late autumn, and I was driving through the winding roads of Calabasas toward my parents' house for our weekly family dinner. The sun was setting over the Santa Monica Mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. It should have been peaceful, but my stomach was already tightening with the familiar anxiety these dinners always brought. I knew what was coming. I always knew. My father, Bill, had built a successful career in corporate management before retiring 5 years ago. He was a man who valued appearances, traditional success markers, and above all, the appearance of having raised successful children. My mother, Carol, was softer around the edges but had long ago learned to echo whatever opinions Bill held most strongly. Then there was my older sister, Brittany, the golden child who could do no wrong in their eyes. I pulled into the circular driveway of my parents' sprawling Mediterranean-style villa, parking my Civic next to Brittany's gleaming white Mercedes SUV. Even the cars told a story, or at least the story everyone believed. I grabbed the wine I'd brought and headed inside, steeling myself for what was to come. The house smelled like roasted chicken and rosemary, warm and inviting in a way that made the coldness of what followed even more jarring. I found everyone already gathered in the dining room, and Brittany was holding court as usual, her phone thrust out toward our parents and Uncle David, who'd come down from San Francisco for the weekend. "Look at this kitchen," she was saying, her voice pitched with excitement. "See the marble? It's imported from Italy. Had it shipped directly. And these cabinets, they're all custom-made by this artisan in Pasadena. Cost a fortune, but totally worth it. This is what homeownership is about, you know? Building equity, creating something that's yours, not like throwing money away on rent every month." She glanced at me as I entered, and her smile sharpened just slightly. "Hi, Oralee," she said sweetly. "Still renting that place in Burbank?" I set the wine down on the sideboard. "Still there," I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral. Brittany shook her head with what looked like genuine sympathy but felt like condescension. "I just don't understand how you can stand it. Every month, just handing over money to some landlord's pocket. You're building their wealth, not yours." But I guess not everyone has the financial mindset for homeownership. My father jumped in before I could respond, which was probably for the best. "Oralee," he said, his voice taking on that particular tone of disappointment I'd grown up hearing. "You're 29 years old now. You can't keep living like a college student forever. You don't have a solid reputation in your career, and you don't even own a piece of property. When are you going to get serious about your future?" I took my seat at the table, carefully arranging my napkin in my lap. "I'm doing fine, Dad," I said quietly. "Fine isn't good enough," he countered. "Your sister bought her house at 26. She's built something real." Uncle David, never one to miss an opportunity to pile on, nodded sagely. "The market's tough right now, Bill. You need serious income, perfect credit, and a massive down payment. Some people just aren't built for that kind of financial responsibility." Brittany reached over and patted my hand, her touch as false as her concern. "Don't feel bad, Oralee. I know that little consulting company of yours probably doesn't bring in enough for a down payment. Real estate is expensive. Maybe you should focus on building your business first, then think about buying later. Much later." I smiled and said nothing, cutting into my chicken with perhaps more force than necessary. This was how it always went. Brittany's accomplishments were celebrated, examined, praised. My life was picked apart, found wanting, and offered up as a cautionary tale. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I owned the house Brittany was so proudly showing off on her phone. I was her landlord, and I had been for the past 2 years. After dinner, while I was helping clear the dishes, Brittany cornered me in the kitchen. Her voice dropped to a whisper, though her words still carried that edge of superiority. "If you need advice about mortgages or finding a good realtor for first-time buyers with limited budgets, I know someone. He's very patient and understands special circumstances like yours." "Special circumstances," I repeated, loading plates into the dishwasher. "You know what I mean. Limited income, not much savings." It's nothing to be ashamed of. We all start somewhere. I turned to look at her directly, and for just a moment, I let her see something cold in my eyes. Thanks for your concern, Brittany. I'll keep that in mind. The drive home that night felt longer than usual. I kept replaying the dinner in my mind, each subtle dig and not so subtle insult. The thing was, I could have ended it all right there. I could have told them the truth. But something stopped me. Some combination of pride and the grim satisfaction of knowing exactly how hypocritical they all were. Especially Brittany. Let me explain how we got here. 2 years ago, almost to the day, Brittany had called me in a panic. Could we meet for coffee? It was urgent. I'd driven to an upscale cafe in Westwood, the kind of place where a latte cost $8 and came with foam art. I'd found her at a corner table, and for once, her perfectly maintained facade was cracking. "Orally," she'd said, her hands trembling around her cup, "I'm in trouble. Big trouble." "What kind of trouble?" I'd asked, genuinely concerned despite everything. She'd taken a shaky breath. "The pharmaceutical company I work for, they're eliminating entire departments. I'm going to be laid off in 3 months. And the mortgage on the house? It's $3,200 a month. I can't afford it. If Mom and Dad find out, if anyone finds out, my reputation will be destroyed. Everything I've built, the image, it'll all fall apart." I'd sat back in my chair, studying her. This was the sister who'd spent years making me feel small, inadequate, less than. And now she was asking for help. "I need you to help me," she'd continued, tears starting to form. "Just temporarily, like a loan. I'll pay you back as soon as I find a new job. You're the only one I can trust with this. Please." Looking back, I'm not entirely sure why I said yes. Maybe it was years of conditioning to put family first. Maybe it was curiosity about how long she'd keep up the charade. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to see exactly how far her hypocrisy would go. Whatever the reason, I'd agreed. "How much?" I'd asked. $3,200 a month, she'd whispered. "Just until I'm back on my feet." "Okay," I'd said. "Consider it a temporary loan." The relief on her face had been palpable, but there'd been something else there too. A flicker of surprise that I even had that kind of money to spare. She hadn't asked where I'd get it from. She'd been too desperate and too self-absorbed to question the logistics. That had been 24 months ago. 24 months of transferring $3,200 from my account to cover her mortgage. 24 months of watching her at family dinners, talking about her financial success, her smart investments, her business acumen. She'd even claimed to have found a better job, though I knew from Janet, my property manager, that there were often difficulties when Brittany's own minimal payments came through. The worst part wasn't the money. I could afford it easily. My real estate portfolio generated over $40,000 in rental income each month. $3,200 was barely 8% of that. The worst part was sitting through dinner after dinner, listening to her lecture me about fiscal responsibility while I literally paid for the roof over her head. But that Sunday dinner had been different. Something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was Uncle David's comment about some people not being built for financial responsibility. Maybe it was my father's disappointment, so familiar it had become like background noise. Or maybe it was just Brittany's hand on mine, that patronizing pat, that final small gesture of superiority that broke something I'd been holding together for too long. The next morning, I sat in my office on the 32nd floor of a glass tower in downtown Los Angeles, looking out over the sprawling city. My consulting company, which everyone dismissed as small and struggling, actually managed a $12 million real estate portfolio. The view from my window alone probably cost more per month than Brittany thought I made in a year. I pulled up my financial dashboard, looking at the properties I owned. 17 in total, scattered across Los Angeles County. Single-family homes in Riverside and Fontana, duplexes in Long Beach, a small apartment building in Koreatown. And yes, a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Calabasas with Italian marble countertops and custom cabinets. Brittany's house. My house. I picked up my phone and called Janet. She answered on the second ring. "Good morning, Orly. What can I do for you?" "Janet," I said, my voice calm and measured. "I need you to stop processing the monthly payment from Brittany Matthews for the Riverside property. Starting next month." There was a pause. "Are you sure?" "That's been an ongoing arrangement for 2 years. I'm sure," I confirmed. "I'll handle all notifications myself." "Understood," she replied, professional as always. "I'll make the necessary adjustments." My next call was to my accountant, briefly discussing the termination of what we'd been listing as a family loan. And then, steeling myself, I called Brittany. She answered cheerfully. Orly, hey, what's up? I was just thinking about you. I have this amazing idea for the bathroom remodel I'm planning. You should come see the tile samples. Brittany, I cut in, keeping my voice level. We need to talk about your monthly mortgage payments. They're going to stop. Next month is the last one. The silence on the other end was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice had gone up an octave. Stop? What do you mean stop? Orly, I can't afford it. You know I can't. We had an agreement. We had an agreement for temporary help, I corrected. It's been 24 months. That's not temporary anymore. I can't continue funding your lifestyle indefinitely, especially when you spend every family dinner lecturing me about financial responsibility. Lecturing you? She sputtered. I never did that. I was trying to help you. Sunday night, I said flatly. You spent over an hour explaining to me how I should buy a house and build equity instead of throwing money away on rent. But that's different, she said weakly. I was just trying to give you advice. Give me advice, I repeated, letting a cold smile touch my lips even though she couldn't see it. While I pay your entire mortgage every month, your lavish lifestyle isn't my problem anymore, Brittany. Her voice rose, panicked now. I can't lose this house. If the family finds out, if anyone finds out, they'll think I'm a failure. Everything I've worked for, my reputation, it'll all be gone. That's not my problem to solve anymore, I said quietly, and hung up. I sat in my chair for a long moment after that, staring at my phone. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt calm, almost eerily so, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years and finally, I could exhale. The next week passed in relative silence. Brittany tried calling me several times. I didn't answer. She sent texts that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperately pleading. I read them all and responded to none. I knew what was coming. I'd known from the moment I made that call. And some part of me, the part that had endured years of subtle put-downs and not-so-subtle superiority, was grimly looking forward to it. The summons came on a Thursday evening, a family meeting. Emergency. Everyone needed to be there. No exceptions. I drove to Calabasas again. This time, without the anxiety. I felt strangely light, unburdened. Whatever happened next, at least it would be honest. At least the pretense would be over. I arrived to find everyone already assembled in the living room. The usual warm, convivial atmosphere was gone, replaced by something tense and uncomfortable. Brittany sat on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen. My mother hovered nearby, clearly worried but confused. My father stood by the fireplace, his expression thunderous. Uncle David sat in an armchair, looking concerned. Brittany looked up as I entered, and for the first time in my life, I saw something like genuine fear in her eyes. Orally, my mother said softly, please sit down. Your sister has something she needs to tell us. I took a seat in the chair across from Brittany, crossing my legs and waiting. My face, I knew, was impassive. I'd spent years perfecting that neutral expression. Brittany drew a shaky breath. I have something to confess, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Something I should have told everyone a long time ago. What is it, sweetheart? My mother asked gently. Brittany's eyes filled with tears. I've been having serious financial problems. More serious than I ever let on. I couldn't pay my mortgage. And orally, she's been helping me. She's been paying my entire mortgage for the past 2 years. $3,200 every single month. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched as the words sank in, as everyone processed what they'd just heard. My father's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, disbelief, confusion, and then, slowly, something that might have been shame. Orally, my mother finally said, her voice faint, how could you possibly afford that? Uncle David was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You, he said slowly, the one who drives that beat-up Honda and lives in that small apartment in Burbank, you've been paying Brittany's mortgage? I uncrossed my legs and leaned forward slightly. That beat-up Honda is 3 years old and fully paid off. And yes, I've been covering Brittany's mortgage. It wasn't difficult. It represents about 8% of my monthly rental income. Your rental income, my father repeated flatly. From what exactly? I reached into my bag and pulled out a leather portfolio I'd brought specifically for this moment. From my 17 rental properties scattered across Los Angeles County, I opened the portfolio and pulled out a professionally bound document, setting it on the coffee table. That's a summary of my investment portfolio. Property locations, purchase dates, current market values, and monthly rental income. My father picked it up with trembling hands, flipping through pages. His face grew paler with each one. This says your total property value is over $4.2 million. That's the current market assessment, I confirmed. It's probably higher now. Property values have been climbing steadily for the past 18 months. Brittany was crying openly now, her words coming out in gasps between sobs. I didn't mean for it to go on this long. I thought I'd get a better job. I thought I could pay you back. But then everyone kept talking about how successful I was and how you needed to get your life together, and I just couldn't tell them the truth. My mother looked devastated. Why didn't you tell us, Orly? All these years we thought you were struggling. Because what you thought about my success didn't matter to me, I said simply. I didn't need your approval or recognition to build a profitable business, but I got tired of funding Brittany's lifestyle while she lectured me about financial responsibility. Uncle David was still staring at the portfolio. You kept all this success quiet for years while we what exactly? While you gave me unsolicited advice, I said, my voice hardening slightly. While you treated me like the family disappointment. While you made assumptions about my capabilities based on absolutely nothing. My father set down the portfolio, and I saw something I'd rarely witnessed in my life. My father looked ashamed. Orally, I owe you a serious apology. We all do. We were completely wrong about you for all these years. Wrong about many things, I agreed. Brittany looked up, her face blotchy and tear-stained. So what happens now? What happens to my house? I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. That's your problem to solve, Brittany. You have 30 days to figure out how to cover that mortgage without my financial support. If you can't, then you need to sell the house. Move somewhere smaller that you can actually afford on your real income, or find a way to increase that income. But I'm not funding your lifestyle anymore. I picked up my bag and turned toward the door. Wait, my father called out. Just wait a moment. I paused, looking back over my shoulder. How long have you been doing this? Building this portfolio? I started buying properties when I was 24, I said. 5 years ago. My consulting company isn't small. It manages $12 million in real estate assets. I just never felt the need to advertise that fact to people who had already decided I was a failure. I left them there in that living room, walking out to my modest Honda Civic without looking back. As I drove away from that beautiful house in Calabasas, the house I owned, the house Brittany had been so proud of, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. The next few weeks were interesting, to say the least. My phone exploded with messages. My mother wanted to talk, to understand, to apologize. My father sent stiff, formal texts about family and misunderstandings. Uncle David sent a long email about his own experiences with being underestimated. I responded to them all politely but briefly. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted to be done. Brittany tried calling every day for the first week, then every other day, then once a week. I let them all go to voicemail. Janet kept me updated on the Riverside property. Brittany had put it on the market. The house sold quickly, the Calabasas market being what it was. She was moving to a smaller condo in Van Nuys. 2 months after that family meeting, my mother called and asked if I would come to Sunday dinner. Just dinner, she said. No drama. Brittany wants to apologize properly. I almost said no. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see how the dynamic had shifted. I wanted to see if anything had really changed. The house looked the same when I pulled up that Sunday evening, but the atmosphere inside was completely different. My father stood when I entered, something he'd never done before. Uncle David, visiting again, actually looked nervous. My mother hugged me tightly, holding on longer than usual. And Brittany, she looked different. Thinner, more tired, but also somehow more real, less polished, less perfect, more human. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation was stilted at first. Then my father cleared his throat. Orally, I wanted to say, properly this time, that I'm sorry. We all are. We made assumptions about your life, your success, your capabilities, and we were profoundly wrong. There's no excuse for how we treated you. I appreciate that, I said simply. Uncle David jumped in. I've been reading about real estate investment strategies since we last talked. What you've built is genuinely impressive. I'd love to hear more about how you did it, if you're willing to share. The rest of dinner passed in a surreal haze. My father asked for my advice on an investment property he was considering. My mother wanted to know about my company, my day-to-day work, with genuine interest. Even Brittany, quiet and subdued, asked thoughtful questions about property management. After dinner, Brittany asked if she could talk to me privately. We went out to the back patio, where the lights of the valley spread out below us. I paid my first month's mortgage on the condo, she said quietly. All by myself, from my own account. It felt incredible. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. She looked at me, her eyes still holding that new vulnerability. I still feel terrible about all those years, taking your money while constantly criticizing your life choices. I was so caught up in maintaining an image that I lost sight of reality. You taught me something valuable, I said, looking out at the lights. Supporting family shouldn't come with strings attached or expectations, but it also shouldn't enable people to avoid reality indefinitely. She nodded slowly. I got a better job, better pay. It's not as glamorous as I used to pretend my life was, but it's honest. That feels better than I expected. We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment. It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely, but it was something, a start maybe. 3 months after that dinner, I received a text from Brittany. It was a photo of a bank statement showing a mortgage payment processed entirely from her account. The message below it read, "First payment on my condo, completely from my own account. Feels amazing. Thank you for everything you did, and thank you for finally saying no when I needed to hear it." I read the message sitting in my office, looking out at the city I'd quietly conquered while everyone thought I was failing. I smiled, a real smile this time, and typed back a simple response. Proud of you. Now, sitting here in my office with a glass of champagne, I can reflect on how far I've come. No more monthly transfers to maintain someone else's carefully constructed illusion of prosperity. No more lectures about financial responsibility from someone who couldn't afford their own successful lifestyle. No more being the family disappointment. My portfolio continues to grow. I recently closed on my 18th property, a duplex in Pasadena. My consulting company just signed 3 new clients. And my family, they see me differently now. Whether that matters or not, I'm still deciding. What matters is that I see myself differently. Not as someone who needs their approval, but as someone who built something remarkable in spite of their doubts. The funny thing about being underestimated is that it gives you a certain freedom. No one expects anything from you, so you can build your empire in peace, without pressure or scrutiny. And when you finally reveal what you've built, the look on their faces makes every moment of doubt, every subtle insult, every patronizing comment worth it. I raise my glass to the city below, to the properties scattered across it that bear my name, to the life I built while everyone thought I was failing. And I think about Brittany in her modest condo, finally living within her means, finally being honest about who she is and what she can afford. There's a strange satisfaction in knowing that in cutting her off, I might have done her the biggest favor of her life. Family is complicated. Love is complicated. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their illusions any longer. Sometimes you have to let them fall so they can learn to stand on their own. And sometimes, the family disappointment turns out to be the family success story. They just couldn't see it because they were too busy looking down on me to notice I'd climbed higher than any of them. That, I think, taking a sip of champagne and watching the sun set over my city, is definitely worth celebrating.